Pyro Unleashed presents the Finale3D Tip of the Week, sponsored by Finale Fireworks.
All right, and here we are, back for episode 13. Going strong, got this one and one more next week. I would agree with you, Drew. I think last week was probably one of my favorite episodes. It was so much great content in there.
Yeah.
If you have not, you need to go back and rewatch it. Just not enough good things to be said about that. All right.
And some more good stuff this week.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah. We're gonna start talking about customizing labels and reports. So, I guess, Drew, let's kind of jump into customizing reports. This is one that I haven't really ever done. I haven't customized anything. So this is going to be kind of all new to me. So,
yeah,
excited to see this.
Well, yeah, hopefully we get some inspiration from this. When I've shot shows in the past, what I tend to do is think, would XYZ thing be easier if a report looked this way or that way, or I had more information or other information, or if it were sorted differently, or maybe my eyes are getting worse and I just want the text bigger. You never know, right? So, but in the pro version of Finale, reports are customizable, pretty heavily customizable. There are a lot of built-in reports. There's only 5 built-in reports in Light, but there are 45 plus built-in reports in Hobbyist and Pro. Hobbyist and Pro have the same built-in reports. So when we're talking about reports, we're talking about something different than labels, obviously, but also something different than diagrams. So now that we have the hybrid rack diagrams that you saw last time in the last video we did, you've seen like reports that have diagrams and they have sort of script reports on them, right? So that's kind of a new thing. Those are under diagrams, but what I want to talk about today is specifically like the core report stuff. So pick something easy to start with. We'll just talk about like a product totals report. So this is if you wanted a report that shows you like the grand total of each part number or each unique item you have in your show, that would be what we call a product totals report. So what I like to do is just kind of, when you're familiarizing yourself with Finale3D, you just kind of generate some reports and take a look at them and see, if they have what you want, right? So here's product totals is the way it comes out of the box. When it comes to customizing, you can start from scratch, but it's easier to kind of springboard from something that already exists. So modifying an existing report is just a little bit less work if you can find something that's close to what you want. And it's also just lessens the learning curve as well, right? So for example, we'll just arbitrarily take a look at this report and say, we don't have, this particular show doesn't have any prices entered for the products or costs or weight or any cues. So let's just say hypothetically, that's really just wasted space. So we can get rid of those. So I'll show you how to do that. There's always the question of like, where do I go to customize? And it's going to be a function of what's on the report. So once you learn to think about this in this way, it becomes pretty obvious. But if a report there's kind of 2 places that in Finale where you see product information, right, or descriptions of products. One is in the effects window, and the other is in the script window. In this case, I shouldn't say in this case. In the case of all reports, you go to the place where the data exists. So if your report contains script data, you customize the report in the script window. In this case, it's a little confusing because like you could easily say to yourself, well, it's showing me used quantities and descriptions. Why not the effects window? The easiest thing to say is there's only one report built in for Finale that's based on the effects window, and every other one, if it's not racks related, is based on the script window. So it's just almost always the case that if you're doing a report that includes data about your products or your script events in your script, the items in your script, then it's going to be, and especially if it includes addresses, right? Addresses only exist in the script window. So it just happens to be that the script window is the place where the vast majority of reports are customized, and labels, as we'll get into in a little bit. So if you want to customize the layout of a report, and that's like the visibility of the columns and the order in which the columns appear on the page, you go to the blue gear and you choose select table layout from report template. So in this case, we'll say product, we're looking for product totals. And the one I pulled up was landscape, so we'll choose that. So when I click this, what you'll see is that the script window changes from being the default layout that you use when designing the show to showing you the columns that are on the report.
Wow.
So you use this window to determine which columns are visible, what order they appear from left to right, and their relative widths. So, if, as an example, like the size column is first here, I can make that wider by going like this, right? So you make it wider here and you save that back to the template, it's making it wider on the page, right? So we said we wanted to get rid of price, so I can just right click and say hide, right click on cost, say hide this column, right click on weight, hide this column, right click on NEQ, hide this column. And let's say we want to see manufacturer. So go ahead and go to the blue gear and we'll unhide manufacturer. This is the same process you'd go through if you wanted to customize this window when you're scripting, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's say for whatever reason I want quantity to be first. So I can right click on quantity and say move this column left. It moves it one spot left. Click again, it moves another spot left. So I'll put it all the way over here on the left just to see what you can do. So now I go back to the blue gear and I choose save current table layout to report template. And then I'm not doing anything. You notice I didn't do anything with the sort order or any formatting, anything. It's just which columns are visible, what order they're in, and their relative widths. That's what you do before you come here. And then everything else you can change, after you choose a report. So I could choose new report template and start from scratch. But again, I recommend springboarding from a configuration that already exists. So I'll choose product totals landscape. And this is newer. If you've customized a report before beginning of April this year, 2025, you wouldn't have seen this. But now, really pushing, like Finale is really resisting a user making changes to the built-in reports. It effectively is preventing it. Because if you make changes to the built-in reports, and then you refresh your built-in reports, you lose all your customization. So this is like saying, hey, this is your custom report. Give it a name that's not the default. So I'm just going to put, my, and you're going to see why it's useful to have 01 at the beginning. That's not an accident for the blueprint name. But for this one, I'll just say my product totals report just so you can see a customization there.
Okay.
Come in here. We have a whole bunch of options. That's the blueprint name and page title we just put in. We have filters, which we'll talk about when we get to labels. Just as a little tidbit for everyone to understand what these do, this particular show doesn't contain lights or SFX or flames or anything that's from a DMX driven machine. But the intent of these filters is, if it did, to hide them from the list. Because you don't, like, DMX is treated separately, has different reports. And so when you're going to pull shells in your magazine, you don't want it to say like 722 G-flame shots. It just doesn't make sense for that to be on that report, right? So this filter effectively serves the purpose of filtering out DMX special effects. If there are no DMX special effects, this filter does nothing. So it's not causing any harm, leaving it there. You can say how you want the report sorted. And the report, again, this is the report that already existed. So the current sorting is size and part number. And it's combining all the rows of items that have the same size and part number. And that's why you're getting just one line for each part number on the report. So what I'll do now is we'll just generate it. We'll just go ahead and...
So you can combine chains and groups.
Yeah, you can. This particular show doesn't have any chains, but by default, like most reports do have that turned on. So yeah, that's just so that when you on the report you see one line for a chain.
Gotcha.
But in the case of like if the chain has the same part, all the shells on the chain are one part number, it's a pre-made chain, then do the same thing. But
gotcha.
But yeah, it just depends on what you're doing. So for simplicity, I'm going to say, hey, right now all I want to do is change the column format. So I did that. I can click enter. And now I come up to reports and I have my product totals. And that's going to be at the top level reports menu. It's not going to be buried in one of the other menus here, one of the top 3. It's always going to be at the top level menu when you customize. It's important to know that this is a blueprint, and this report template is saved as a blueprint, and it's in this show, the show that's open right now.
Yeah.
So when you go file new show, and now I have a new blank show, it's not in here.
Yeah.
So it's a really important trick. I don't know if it's something we've talked about before, but let me go back to that show real quick. Go to the blueprints window. This contains all the blueprints that are in the show. The one that's highlighted is the one that we just edited. That's why it's easy to find right now. There it is. So this line represents the custom report. This is not made really to be human readable. You can come in here to delete it. That's the main reason you might come in here. But the even bigger reason you'd come in here is to go copy and go to some new show that you have going, and then go paste. And then you pasted that in. So I just did paste on my keyboard. By pasting the blueprint row from the blueprints window from one show to another, you move that custom blueprint from show to another. So you don't have to recreate your blueprint. That's a very common question I get. Do I have to recreate all my custom stuff every show? No. You can set up a custom. You don't even have to copy from show to show. You can get all your own blueprints set up, and you can make yourself a show template. And you can even set that up you can save that show as a startup template, so that show always pops up first when you launch Finale. That's getting a little bit into the weeds. So let's pop back here and let's go ahead and generate that report. So here it is, my product totals. And now you see we have quantity first. And that size column got a little bit wider. Also, all the columns got wider because I removed so many columns.
Yeah. And
I've added manufacturer over here on the right. So it's looking cleaner for the hypothetical scenario that I laid out. Let's just demonstrate real quick. Let's say that I need to have I've got different magazines, and I just happen to store Night Owl in one magazine and Raccoon in another. So I really want like separate pages of my report for each brand. So right now I've got Raccoon and Night Owl kind of mixed here. What I'd like to have is all the Night Owl and then all the Raccoon and have them separate pages. Yeah. So we go back to the blue gear. This time we're not doing anything with this. We can go back to our normal script layout because we're not changing what columns are visible. And we're changing sort order and page breaks. So that's just directly into edit the report template. Then now you see the value of having 1 at the beginning. By having the 1, it's at the top of the list as opposed to being buried somewhere in this list of things that's not super easy to read. So that's why we automatically put the 0, 1 at the beginning, just to help keep your list so you can find your stuff at the top. So how would you like the rows sorted? Let's sort by manufacturer and then part number. And then let's add a page break for manufacturer. And in the subtitle, just to show that it's possible, there's subtitles at the top of each page. Let's include manufacturer in the subtitle. Of course, we added the column for it, so it's going to be in 2 places, but you still see.
Yeah, that's very good.
All right, and then let's go ahead and generate that report one more time. And now you can see we've got a subtitle here, manufacturer Night Owl. We've got the Night Owl products, and they're sorted. I sorted them by part number, so you've got 25, 17. Oh, this has got 2 dashes. That's why it's the first here, and 2, 25, etc. And then on page 2, we've got the Raccoon products, sorted in part number order. We could have chose description. That might make more sense, but just arbitrarily, just as proof of what's possible, this is the kind of thing you can do. So you can turn on and off the zebra striping, where every other row is gray. You can change the font size. You can add conditional formatting. There's all kinds of things you can do, but that's kind of a basic overview just to kind of show you what's possible. Yeah.
Very good. Say you wanted to put a sublocation in there. Is there a way to do that?
Sublocation.
For like a container number, for example.
Yeah. So any of the information that's in the script can appear on the report. So if you've got if you come over here to the blue gear item column, there is a column for storage location.
Oh, okay, yeah, perfect.
So, for example, if you're using storage location, in this particular show, the storage location is blank.
Yeah.
But if you populate that data, and in this case, also storage location can't be edited here in the script. Storage location is a property of the products.
Of the product, okay.
And yeah, so that would be something you would, if I, for example, put in, mag 1 up here, we'll see that populating in down here, right?
Gotcha.
So if I were to put, as I fill that in, you can see it populates in the individual events that correspond to those lines.
Wonderful.
So yeah, so if you can put anything on the report it's script data going onto the report. So anything that exists, any of the columns that exist in the script window can become columns on the report.
All right, perfect. And I guess, yeah, let's get into labels next.
All right, cool. So, all right, I think for this one, what we'll do is we'll start out same kind of thing. We'll show some labels like the way they come out of the box.
Yeah.
And just because they're so common, I'm going to choose that we have a number of built-in label templates, both for the United States and for other regions around the world. But just because they're so common here in the US, I'll choose the Avery 5260. This is kind of the ones that everybody knows. I think the Avery people wonder why they're selling so many of these, and they don't realize it's because we're blowing them up. We're probably not the biggest consumer, but they never would have imagined this was what they'd be used for. So this is the 30 per sheet address labels. This is the size 1 by 2 5/8 inch. So we'll crank these out for this show. And they look something like this. This show just has some single shots in it, so the labels are just showing single shot products. So let's talk a little bit about the anatomy of the label first. So I've got my part number. This is my position name. This is my full address, which includes the module or what you might call channel number. The red here is the pin number, what you might call the queue. This has fancy angle colors, as we call it, which means that anything angled to the left has the green color versus anything angled to the right has the red color. And the description, this little hint that tells you how many e-matches are on that pin. The name of the show, which comes from the show information. It'll show the date as well if I put a date in. And then the address is repeated. And the reason the address is repeated on the right side is because it's pretty common to put these labels on like the e-match wire. And so when you fold that label over the e-match wire, if your address is on both sides, then you don't have to flip it over if it just happens to be facing, the other way.
Yeah.
When you're going to wire up a show. So I have a screenshot I want to share with you to kind of get a little bit deeper into label anatomy, because this is when it comes to editing the labels, you don't get to see the label in real time in Finale as you're making the tweaks. So you kind of have to be able to visualize in your head like what the results are going to be of the change you're trying to make. Otherwise, it's difficult. And so it's good to know what kind of fits on the label and what the label layout is like. So let's take a look at this real quick. So regardless of whether my label is the Avery 5260 or whether it's something completely different, the number of content areas on the label is the same. So every label supports up to 4 rows of information. So here's the first row here. Second row. First row has the part number and position, right? Second row has the address and angles. Third row is description and the e-match hint, and etc. Right? So there are 4 rows. Each of those rows has a left-right split. You can control where the split is, right? So if you have something like a description that takes up a lot of space, you can move that split over further to the right and just put a tiny bit of information over on the right. So this is the default layout. And of course, the whole goal of this exercise here is to show you how to customize it. But it's good to know what, when you're looking just at numbers and punching in numbers in the configuration, it's good to know like what you're working with. So you have 8 total places you can put information, the 4 rows and then left and right. So 4 times 2 is 8, these 8 red boxes that you see. There's one other thing that really matters, and I'm going to demonstrate text wrapping, and that's why this really matters. There's also the concept of padding. So within one of these rows, you realize if you look at, let's take for example this row here, which is row 2, it has the address. the text doesn't go all the way to the row is represented by this red box here, the content area. But there's some white space above and below that. That's the padding. And the padding can become really important to making the label look good, because there is no set this to 10-point font, set this to 12-point font. What there is setting the height of the row and setting the amount of padding on the top and the bottom. And when you set those things, the font gets set to the size to fit into there. So the font height or the font size is a function of the row height and the padding. So you get to control those things, but it's kind of backwards from the way you normally think about font size, where it's like, no, I want 10-point font. Like, give me 10-point font. Doesn't work that way. And the reason is because it's a label. It's fixed size. The label size never changes. You can't change it. So it's the things we're changing the size of the text inside the label to fit the configuration that you choose, right? So try to keep that in your mind as we go from here back into Finale.
Gotcha.
So because the labels contain script data, guess where we go to edit them? The script window. So we go to the blue gear. We'll go to create or edit labels template. And we have the same label, like the label layouts, the 5260, for example, sorted in different ways. So there's so many in here because there's what we call the basic, which is by address, then there's by part number, by position, by size, and then we also have chain labels and rack labels and other things. But the one that I just showed you was the basic one, which is the Avery 5260 basic. So again, we're not going to start from scratch. I'm going to springboard from something that already exists because it's much easier. Again, it's asking me to not edit the built-in one and instead do a custom, give it my own name. So I'm just going to do that. I'll leave this as this looks good to me. There we go. Again, we're filtering. We'll talk about filtering labels in a moment because sometimes you might want to print just some labels for your show, but right now I'm just going to leave that alone. And what we'll talk about is the other things you can change. So you can control the sort order. You can control how many labels you're getting. Like, do you want a label for everything on every shell in a chain? Or do you just want a label for the chain? In which case, David, as you had alluded to when we were looking at reports, like here's a situation where this is checked. Combined chains, only one label per chain, right? You can control page breaks if you want page breaks. This report doesn't, this particular layout doesn't have it. Measurements of the label, unless generally like the templates are designed to match the manufacturer's templates. If it's not printing right, most likely the problem is the configuration of the printer. I strongly recommend printing. I've seen a lot of alignment issues when you print from web browsers. Like if you open in Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge the labels and print from there, it doesn't work as well as, because the labels document is a PDF, it works better to print from a PDF, a dedicated PDF application like Acrobat Reader. And I know there are other free, PDF applications as well, but make sure your page scaling is set to actual size, not fits or anything. But you can, if you know your print settings are all right and you're using Acrobat Reader or something and you still have a problem, you can tweak these things to kind of nudge the labels around the page or whatever, or create your own template from scratch for something that Finale doesn't have. But this section down here is where you're going to spend most of your time. So I showed that little diagram of the label with 4 rows and sort of 2 columns. And here it is, and this is what it looks like when you're configuring it. And that's why it's so important to know what you're getting. So this is your top row, your center row, your bottom row, and then we call this the extra row, which is really the 4th row. You have the split, the vertical split. Where is that on the row?
Okay.
In this case, this means that the split is 60% of the way across the row. So that was leaving most of that room, 60% of the room for I think it was the part number, and then the position name was the 40% on the right. So you also have the height, and the height, this is the height of the row. 25 plus 45 plus 15 plus 15 adds up to 100. 100% the height of the label. Yeah. So when you tweak the labels, it's important that if you want it to come out right, it should be the case that all of these height numbers add up to 1 or 100% of the height of the label, right? So let's move on. Let's do something interesting. We've given the background now. So if we go back to the labels, let me just pull up the labels I made so we can point out kind of one that's not kind of ideal. Take this one, for example. Module 3, pin 1. We can't see the whole description of this item.
Yep.
And let's say we want to dedicate, we're willing to give up, say, for example, the e-match hint. So we're willing to give that up so we can have a whole line for the description. And we know we have some really long descriptions, so we really like to have 2 lines for description. We like to have the text wrap, right? So let's look at how we can do that. So that's 1, 2, that's the 3rd line here. And here you can see that's called the bottom row, left side content, size, and description. So let's go ahead and say on the right side of that row, we have the e-match hint. We're willing to do without that. And now this split, we don't want to split it. We want it to be just 100% of the label is used for the size and description. So 100% is used for the left side contents. So we'll just set that to 1. And let's go ahead and turn on text wrapping. Now I'm going to print this isn't going to work great, but I'm going to print it so you can see that it's broken, and then I'll show you how to fix it. So let's go ahead and do that. And then now if we go to labels, here's my Avery 5260, right? Looks like there were some other custom ones that were already in here, actually. All right, so here's this. And let's go back to that one we were looking at, 3.1. And so we've got an issue. We're still not seeing the text wrapping, right? So we are using the full line for the description, but we're not getting 2 lines of text. There's still, the description is still cut off there.
Yeah.
I
think that might be it.
I think it's cut off. I'm not sure. This one actually.
That should be the end of that description, actually, I believe.
I would not argue with you about Night Owl. Let's do this. Let's make it so you're wrong by making the description longer.
Perfect.
Now it's longer. Okay. Do that again. So let's see here what we got. Okay, so here we go. So look what's going on here. There's the rest of that description. You see it kind of just like down there, like kind of buried in there. You can't read it.
Yeah.
And that's because adding text wrapping doesn't automatically change the font size, and it doesn't automatically change the height of the row. What we need to do is add enough vertical padding to pinch the text in to allow it to fit when it's 2 lines. And it is kind of counterintuitive, but once you get the hang of it, it's not so hard. So if we go back and edit the labels, what you need to know is that you're worried about this vertical padding here. Right now, the vertical padding is only 16% of the height of the row, and you need it to be enough to fit what you want. So if you want 2 lines of text, you need at least 50% of the height of the row to be white space. And this is the padding at the top and the bottom. So you need at least 0.25, because then you get a quarter at the top and a quarter at the bottom of white space, and that fits 2 lines. David's like, just give me the number, man. Come on. So there is a formula on the website that gives you really simple terms, so you can just calculate how much white space you need based on the number of lines you want to fit. I like to put 0.26 because it gives me a little bit extra. Just click enter like that. And then now check this out. So now if we scroll down just to go back to the one we've been looking at, now we've got the font got really tiny, so it's not wrapping anymore. So it's too small to read because we've pinched it in. So let's go ahead and make one more change real quick. So let's go ahead and change so let's remember the heights of the rows have to add up to 1. So let's knock this down to 30, which means we can knock this up to 30, and now these still add up to 1. And then let's go ahead and take a look one more time. Something like that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of variables, and you just have to tweak until you can see you can see how much smaller our addresses, the module and pin numbers, they got, they're now the same size. They're bold, but they're the same size as the description. So maybe I want that, maybe I don't. But the point is, you do have that control, and the ability to do that.
So could you take it, instead of dividing it by 4, can you make the 4th column just obsolete, essentially?
Yeah, you absolutely, David, that's a clever idea. You can do that. You can set the height of that row to 0. You could increase this one to compensate. You can increase other rows to compensate. And yeah,
Okay.
you could have only one line on the label if you wanted.
Okay.
And you could have only one row, and that row could consume the entire height. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You can do that.
Okay.
Yeah, I always find that last line to be a little bit useless sometimes, and I like to remove it occasionally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
because I could see how switching the part number, the secondary part number, with the pins, and just adding, just having 3 lines could make it work.
It just depends how much stuff you're trying to fit.
Yeah.
So if you can get everything you want in fewer lines, that's awesome.
Yeah.
More often than not, the request I get is, how do I get more lines?
Yeah.
I think I think a 5th line would be kind of handy. For some situations, but you can always use less. So yeah, absolutely. So let's do 2 things. We'll try to do it, fairly quickly here.
Yeah.
Let's talk about filtering labels for the situation where you just need to reprint or print some labels for a particular item, let's say.
Yeah. So say you want to print 2 labels for single shots.
Yeah. So this.
Well, I guess all these are single shots.
All these are single shots. So you just print the whole thing twice. But yeah, we can, for the sake of simplicity, you can say, for this Nishiki comet, I need to reprint the labels, or I just want to print those labels, maybe because I just added them to the show after the fact and I already printed everything else or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So the first thing, there's a good trick for this, and the trick is to find what you're looking for in the script. If you're going to filter to a specific product, I recommend going with a part number, because it's guaranteed to be unique for that product.
Yeah.
And you have to write a filter expression. We're going to replace the one that's in there, the one that basically filters out all the DMX effects. And you don't need to learn, instead of learning to write, it is useful to learn to write the filter expressions, but you can cheat. You can use it. You could use a trick to get Finale to do it for you. So all I have to do is right click on this and say filter to this value. And Finale writes in here, part number equals 10119. Now, if you knew to type that, then you wouldn't need Finale to do it. But this alone does not filter my labels. If I printed the labels now, we're still going to get labels for everything.
Yeah.
But what this did was write a filter expression that I can then copy. I have to use my keyboard to copy here, Control-C. Now I can go back into the label template. And since I could add it to the end, but I don't need these things because I don't have DMX in this show, I can just replace that. So part number equals 10119. So if I hit enter now and I reprint my labels, now I get labels just for the Nishiki comments.
Yeah.
So
you could do the same thing. I apologize. You could do the same thing for the type. You could just type in single shot.
You could just type in single shot, but the question is, what is the column called and how is single shot written and all of those stuff. So again, what I would do is I would go to type. I would go to, the blue gear, unhide column. I'd go to the type column. I would then find that. I would right click on one of them that says single shots and I'd say filter to this value.
Okay.
And I'd learn that the actual name of the column under the hood is part type. No space, and that equals single underscore shot is what I need.
Gotcha.
So it's all, this stuff is all lookupable, if you will. I mean, a word. Like you can go and find the names of all the script columns in a documentation article, but it's just so easy to have Finale do this for you that it makes it easier. So,
I mean, this does make sense because like I was kind of saying before, like I have a tendency to, put a label on the single shot itself on the top and the wire. Whereas cakes and shells, I don't necessarily always do that. So this this would help.
Yeah, no, that's a good use case. And you could even have the labels that you put on the top look different than the labels put on the wire. One of the things we're working on is having different vertical padding on the left versus the right side of the label. And the reason is for that, it's kind of inspired actually by people who put the labels on the top but kind of wrapped around the side. So you might want big text,
the angle on the top
for your address on the top, and then small description down the side or text wrapping on the side. So you would be able to do that once we get a separate, vertical padding for left and right to make something even cooler. So
wonderful.
And then something that's maybe just a little bit more advanced on that filtering. I know I've used it. David's used it. Someone else might be out there using it. You can't just filter for angles that are negative or positive. Like how would you write that filter criteria to say I want to print labels for just negative angles?
Yeah.
I think that I would definitely, in the context of angles, you're just dealing with tilt.
Yeah.
So I would definitely go with the tilt column as what I'm trying to filter. And in this case, I think you could just use an operator like less than.
Yeah.
So if we say, for example, filter to this, I'll just say filter to this value, and we'll say tilt equals -75. I know, and this is something that there's a documentation article for search expressions, but you can use the less than symbol, and then you could do 0.
Yep.
And now you can see that we're getting, we can kind of test the filter here, and you can see that everything I'm getting is less than 0. Now keep in mind, if you print less than 0 and more than 0, you're going to be wondering why you got so many product with no stickers, and that's because you didn't print 0.
You didn't print 0.
You have to be mindful that if you want, negative angles and positive angles, you really need a third set of angles, which is equals 0, right?
Yeah.
But this would do what you're talking about, Donnie. And just because I think it's so useful, let me pull that up on the website. So
yeah. While you're pulling that up, I mean, to Donnie's point, I know you used it at Skywars in 23, and I used it at PGI last year. We had 2 separate colored labels on the top of the single shot. That way, if somebody's going through and doing a quick spot check, you can guarantee that all your lefts are going left and all your rights are going right.
So this is kind of programmery, but if you want to get into the weeds, you can use these expressions as examples. So if you wanted to, if you wanted to print labels for everything that's red or everything that's not red, or everything that includes red crackling, or a duration greater than 2.3, you can do what's called numerical comparisons. Here's those ones I just used: less than, greater than. If you want less than and equal to, right? So let's say you're willing to take everything negative plus all the zeros, then you use negative, less than or equal to 0, and that would include your zeros. When we were looking at the default filter that was written in, that said part type does not equal light, part type does not equal. This does not equal. So exclamation point equal is the not this, right? So David, you could print all your labels but your single shots by saying part type does not equal single shot, and then everything would come out. You don't have to say print me shells plus print me cakes plus print me ground plus print me this. Say, part type does not equal single shot. You get everything but the single shots. That would be using this guy right here. Another one that's really useful, and this word is not, very pretty programmery, but this is effectively OR. So you write in these 2 vertical bars here, which is the key, like the same key as your backsplash key on your keyboard. That means OR. So like if you wanted red or green, then searching, putting red and then bar green would give you anything that is, red, or anything that includes the word green in any of the fields that you're searching. So, yeah. So so useful info there. Do a time check. I can do one more example, or we can wrap up. It's up to you.
Yeah, if you've got another example
go ahead.
Show, that's fine. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So I just happened to be using for this demo the show that we did last week, where we in our last session, where we actually saved, we had 5 racks in here, and we found out that we could get it down to 3 by angling this rack to allow these interior holders to get enough of an angle to hold items that are at 60 degrees. So what you're seeing here is the angle that we need to shoot the items at. And down below, what we're seeing here is the angle relative to the rack. So because the whole rack is tilted You tilt the holders 30, that's the angle relative to the rack, and then you tilt the whole rack another 30, you get your final 60. If you're going to build this, you probably want to see it on, you might really want to see it on the labels. So we've added that recently, the ability to see that. So let's do that. Donnie said that he didn't think that the information on that last row was super useful. So let's repurpose it for that. So instead of show date and what's on here now, show date and name, let's just change this to being the custom blueprint field, and that's this guy up here. And the reason I want to use the custom blueprint field is because I want to label this angle as being the rack relative angle, so I don't get confused why there's two different my crew is going to be horribly confused if there's two different angles on the same label. I'm just going to put RRA, which is rack relative angle. So if the rack's flat on a table and I'm setting my holders, that's going to be the rack relative angle, right? And the final angle is going to be the other angle, basically. It doesn't have this label. So we've got that, and let's go ahead and set that split now to maybe, I don't know, 15%. And yeah, this is what I want. I'm just making sure I'm in the right row. And then this one we'll put angle relative to single shot rack. And we'll just leave it black. That's fine. No worries. And let's take a look and see how it came out. They're still filtered. So in this case, I'm just getting my my Nishikis. Let's see if we've got any that are in that last rack. So I'm looking for, oh, here we go. So here's one, right? So the holder angle when the rack's flat on a table will be set to 30. And because the whole rack is going to be on legs and tilted another 30 degrees, you're going to get the final trajectory of the effect at 60. So,
gotcha.
Yeah. So would it be possible just to replace the angle with a rack relative angle?
That's what I was getting ready to ask.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's no reason you couldn't do that. As long, just if that is the thing that's most clear for your crew, then absolutely. So
yeah, so you could just leave the rack at a 0 on your
so we table. We can take the David approach where we basically say there's nothing here, and we can say this is 0. Now we can bump this up to 45. So I just got rid of the last row. Just kind of giving another demo what you can do. So you've got 45, 55, 65, 70, and then plus another 30% gives you 100. And here we've got angles. You could just change this to be angle relative to single shot rack.
Gotcha.
And there you go. So now let's see what we get. You know what I want to do is remove that filter just so we can see all the products. So let's go up here and clear that part number filter. And then print this one more time. So now you can see we've only got 3 rows, got pretty giant descriptions there. I could increase the other stuff more, but yeah, so now I can't really tell which ones are which. But yeah, I mean, we could find, let's find one here. So if we go back to, so that's module 5, pin 1. Would be one there that has, if I cycle through, so we'd be expecting to see 35, right, as opposed to seeing 65. So again, that was 5-1. So let's go and check it out. These are sorted. There it is.
Yeah, there it is.
Okay. So you're seeing the rack relative angles, and you're still getting the fancy angle colors because that's how the formatting is set. So yeah. You just got to remember that you just got to make sure you keep it straight. So whatever keeps it straight for you is is the way to go.
Yeah. So I want to know what shortcut you're using to refresh this report.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up.
I kept seeing it.
Trying to be sensitive to people that are, like, come on, YouTube videos aren't supposed to be 4 hours long. So yeah, it's listed in every menu where there's something to print. So it's this guy here. So once you've generated, for example, the labels, like once I print these once, Control-Shift-B prints the same thing I just reprints whatever I just printed to a temporary file.
Okay.
The reason this exists is because, as you can imagine, every time you customize labels, there's the pain of you have to reprint them to see how they look because there's no real-time preview.
Yeah.
So this is our sort of stopgap solution for get them on the screen quickly. Because what this does is it just brings them up as a temporary file with a temporary file name in a temporary directory where they're deleted later. They're not saved in your show folder or anything. So you can just keep doing this over and over, and you're not having to continuously generate more and more PDFs until you're done and you're happy with them. Then you actually go, and choose what the one you want by name, and then it actually generates the final PDF.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. Sweet. There we go.
Yep.
Another high quality episode here this week.
Yeah, this is a lot of content here. I'm excited to start using some of this. All right. As always, be sure to go to pyrounleashedpodcast.com. Discord, come hang out, get some merch. One more episode.
Yeah, get close to the end of the season here. You got 4th of July coming up on here in a couple weeks. So again, guys, go out there.
Yeah,
get your shows wrapped up, and next week we're going to kind of finalize this show on kind of rounding everything out with some site layouts and some exporting and all that kind of stuff, and kind of final touches. So again, guys, catch us on Wednesdays for our season finale is probably right around the corner here. So again, make sure you catch that, guys, and we'll have one more finale tip of the week for you guys next Friday. So again, go out there and unleash your inner pyro with us.
This has been another episode of Pyro Unleashed. Come back each week for more industry insights, technical tips, and awesome pyro designs. Have fun out there, be safe, and as always, remember to unleash your inner pyro with us.